Around 1200 years ago, many tribes lived in the Scandinavian region of Europe. Scandinavia is now made up of countries such as Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Greenland. The people living there became known as Norsemen, or Northmen, and were also called Vikings. Because it was so far north, the region they lived in was often very cold, so they were very tough and hardy people. They had to survive the freezing cold winters. To do this, they hunted animals and wore their furs. They built long, narrow houses built out of wood and coated them in earth and grass with thatched roofs. Some of these long houses were up to 250 feet long, and large families lived in them together. For example, if you were a Viking, you might live in the same house, not only with your family, but with your cousins, aunts, and uncles and grandparents. At night, families gathered around a big fireplace called a hearth and told stories about their gods such as Odin, the leader of Asgard, and his wife, Frigg. Their children were Balder, Loki, and Thor. Loki was a trickster, and often his jokes went too far and he was punished for them. Thor was the god of thunder and fought giants in the sky with his powerful hammer, Mjolnir. When he fought these battles, it caused lightning and thunder in the sky. Freya was the goddess of love, beauty, and war. Each god had their own story and adventures that families shared from generation to generation. The Vikings also sang, danced, and played board games around the fire to get them through the long, dark winters. During the warmer months, the Vikings farmed the land and tended sheep and other animals. But they also became very good sailors and navigators. They learned how to follow the sun and stars and color of the ocean and movement of sea life to know their position in the ocean. Their long ships were made of strong wood and could sail in deep oceans or shallow streams. They used the ocean to discover new lands and often sailed very far and wide to trade goods such as furs, timber, and ivory. Some groups of Vikings decided that rather than trading, they would steal from other tribes. They were known for finding a village along the ocean, running the people out, and taking all of their food and valuables, similar to pirates. Vikings were skilled warriors. In battle, they used large, round shields, spears, and axes to fight their enemies. One of their best tactics involved interlocking their shields to create a shield wall. Because of their skills in battle, the Vikings were able to conquer land very far into Europe. They became feared far and wide. While not all Vikings were aggressive and behaved as pirates, stories were told about them through the ages, and one reason most people today assume that all Vikings behaved like pirates. Many Vikings chose to trade with other tribes and often settled the new lands when the climate and soil was right for farming. They settled new places like Iceland and Greenland, and during the Viking Age, many of the tribes moved all the way into England and modern-day Russia. One of the Norsemen who settled Greenland was named Eric the Red. He got his name from his red hair and red beard and his hot temper. Eric's wife was named Jodhild, and they had 3 sons, Thorvald, Leif, and Thorstein, and a sister named Freydis. Greenland was extremely cold and not good for farming, but Eric the Red and his family were able to hunt animals such as reindeer and do some basic farming to survive. The work of clearing the land of trees and farming was very hard, but these hardships are what made Eric the Red and his family strong. Eventually, Eric and his people found a better place to live in Greenland, where Eric's son Leif grew up. His full name was Leif Erikson, since he was Eric's son. Because Eric the Red was so busy as chief, Leif was raised by a friend of their family named Tyrker. Tyrker taught Leif how to hunt with a bow, trap animals to eat, and fish with a hook and net. He also taught Leif how to sail a boat and navigate at sea. These were all very important skills as a Viking. Over time and with lots of practice, Leif learned all of the skills he needed to survive on his own and eventually left his family to make a life for himself. One of the first things he did was sail to the islands off the coast of Scotland, where he met a woman named Thorgunna. They were married and had a son named Thorgils. Like all great Vikings and his father, Leif wanted to explore the world outside of his homeland and discover new lands. Stories have been told about lands west across the ocean from Greenland and Europe. Leif was curious whether he and his people could live there, so he made up his mind to venture out and see for himself. Leif gathered a crew of 34 Vikings and set off across the ocean on their sturdy longboats. After many days of sailing across the Atlantic Ocean, they spotted land. They rowed ashore, but the land was flat and rocky and not good for farming. This place wouldn't be good for a settlement, but Leif had discovered North America. This is the first time Europeans reached the New World in what is now known as Canada, a few hundred years before Christopher Columbus. Leif and his crew decided to continue to sail south, and eventually found a land that was wooded and green. He named this place Markland, but decided to keep on going, looking for a better place. They sailed down a river and to a lake with fresh water that was full of fish. They anchored their boats, rowed ashore, and set up camp so they could learn more about this new place. One day they hiked further inland and found a vineyard and grapes. For this reason, Leif decided to name the new land Vinland, and what is now modern-day Canada. After this, Leif and his crew packed up and sailed back to Greenland to let his people know about the new land they had discovered. Not long after this, Leif's father, Eric the Red, passed away, and Leif became the new chief. He ruled his people for 20 years. Interestingly, he never returned to Vinland, but his brother Thorvald Erikson and his sisters did. They sailed to Vinland, picked more grapes, and cut down trees to take home. They explored further down the coast, but to their surprise, other people were already living there. These native people had lived in the New World for thousands of years. Instead of trying to make friends or communicate with these people, who they called the Skraelings, Thorvald and the other Vikings attacked them. The Skraelings, who survived the attack, ran back to their village and soon returned with other warriors. When Thorvald and the Vikings saw the Skraelings coming their way, they turned and ran. They fired their bows, and Thorvald was hit with an arrow and did not survive. The Vikings stayed in Vinland 2 more seasons and buried Thorvald there, but eventually returned to Greenland. Later, Thorvald's brother, Thorstein, returned to Vinland, and later their sister Freydis. At one point they brought 130 Vikings with them, and again tried to settle the land in North America. But the Native American people who already lived there outnumbered them and did not want them there. They often attacked the Vikings. The Vikings knew that they were outnumbered and that they would have to leave. Staying would be too dangerous. Later, Vikings would occasionally return to Vinland to cut down trees for building in Greenland, but they would never stay permanently. Later, Leif Erikson would go down in history as the first explorer to reach the New World, 400 years before Christopher Columbus. In the United States, in 1964, October 9th officially became Leif Erikson Day. Today, many people across the world trace their roots back to Scandanavia, the land of the Vikings, or Norsemen. Many of these descendants now live in the American Midwest. You may have heard about a football team, the Minnesota Vikings, who are named after their ancestors. We hope you enjoyed this episode about the Vikings, and be sure to tune in next week.